ultrapassando barreiras de tempo e espaço. Utilizando as mais modernas tecnologias comunicacionais, o FGV Palestras foi criado para transmitir os conteúdos de excelência da Fundação Getúlio Vargas. Através dos eventos serão apresentados diversos temas de interesse nacional, com o propósito de promover discussões e debates sobre os rumos do país, contribuindo para a tomada de decisões de lideranças de vários setores da economia. Dentro dessa nova era do conhecimento, comprova-se que a distância não existe.
É com muito prazer que nós estamos aqui recebendo o professor Altman, da New York University, da Stern Business School, com quem a Fundação Getúlio Vargas tem alguns programas customizados, recebendo alunos de grandes instituições financeiras para uma extensão internacional dos nossos programas de MBA. Professor Altman, it's a great pleasure to receive you here in Brazil. We are delighted to have you in our FGV Corporativo, and we thank you very much for the partnership with NYU's Business School, Stern Business School, and also with our programs, MBA programs, which we are doing the international extensions in New York.
It's my pleasure as well.
Thank you so much. Professor Altman, please comment about the internationalization of universities.
Well, my first experience with this issue of internationalization was when I was a young assistant professor as a visitor in France. And we started the first graduate business school exchange program where students spent 1 or 2 semesters abroad to round out their education for the Master of Business Administration. That program started with 3 schools. It has now expanded to over 60 schools, including FGV. And FGV was one of our earliest partners. So that is one example of internationalization of business schools at the student level. We've always had a high percentage of international students coming for the full MBA, maybe 30% of our student body, 35%. And this has been a great contributor to our own students. After that, we began expanding our executive programs into the international sphere. We have now 4 master's programs. One of them is an MBA with international partners. And we draw the students from all over the world. We are not unique in this respect. I think FGV has a program like this, but it's another example of internationalization at the student level, which also gives a great opportunity to our faculty to learn from the students and what is their concerns, what are their issues and experiences. Finally, we have the possibility of offering executive programs, either custom-made for international organizations. For example, we recently cooperated with FGV on a program for a prominent financial institution on capital market development and having it related to the Brazilian environment. That was extremely successful, and as you know, we are now moving ahead to building a program, hopefully with them in other areas. And so this has contributed to the internationalization of our faculty and our students with international partners. And obviously the world is moving toward much more of an international place. And one of the things that attracted me to work with the FGV Corporativo and the Institute of Finance is your interest in expanding internationally. So it's a great honor for me and privilege and pleasure to be involved.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for us too. Professor Altman, you are a reference on the internationalization of FGV Corporativo and in a partnership with Stern Business School. What's the importance for this partnership for Stern Business School?
Well, for us, we learn from our international experience to bring it to the classrooms for our own students. I think that's a basic idea. And most of our faculty have been educated in the United States, so we don't have the international perspective until we start teaching. Personally, I've learned a tremendous amount by being a visiting professor, first in France, and then in actually Brazil in 1977, in Italy, in Australia, and for me, it opened up a new world. So it's not only to help the students, it's to help the faculty in this respect. Why we are interested in programs with FGV goes beyond that. Joint research could be a great opportunity. Some of my recent work in the area of country risk, how you value countries and their probability of having financial problems is an example. Because now we are looking at, literally we can do this analysis for any country in the world.
Sure.
But when we visit emerging markets, we find that the problems there are somewhat unique. And for us to learn that and to build it into our models really makes them much more acceptable overseas. So there's some risk that we bring only the US experience, and we need to counter that by our own personal experience here. And I'm delighted to have that opportunity and to pass it along, hopefully, to some of my colleagues, younger colleagues, who to help them develop as well.
Professor Altman, we were thinking about some ideas of using not only the New York campus, but also some other international campus that NYU has, I understand, in Abu Dhabi and also Shanghai, which could be a very good opportunity for us to bring students from global organizations, and they could study Rio, Sao Paulo, New York, Abu Dhabi, Shanghai. What's your opinion about this opportunity?
Well, actually, you've touched upon something that is a recent high priority objective of our university. We have started full autonomous campuses in Abu Dhabi first, and more recently, as you mentioned, in Shanghai. The idea is to develop a faculty there, local students as well as international students, studying first at the undergraduate level, but also at the graduate level eventually and executive level, in those somewhat unique environments. We have not yet established what you are talking about, bringing executives who have interest in NYU and the Stern faculty, but to have them study in Shanghai or Abu Dhabi or some other foreign environment. We are a global university now. It's part of the mandate of the entire NYU campus, which is very large. And it turns out that the business school will play a primary role, particularly in Shanghai, where the Shanghai government has said, we want a very large concentration in finance, for example, in Shanghai, which means we have a responsibility at the business school level to provide high-level education, first for our students and then eventually for executives.
Sure.
And if we have joint programs and you can spend 1 week in Shanghai, 1 week in Abu Dhabi, and 2 weeks in New York, that could add to the attractiveness of an FGV Stern cooperative.
Yeah, and I believe that Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo could also make a good match also for the international students to come to Brazil and have an idea about our economy, our...
Well, indeed, we already have had some of our TRIUM students. TRIUM is a program we have with a French school and London School of Economics, I should say, LSE and NYU. And one of the modules out of 6 has been, from time to time, in Sao Paulo at FGV. And yes, I mean, obviously Brazil is the most important economy in Latin America and increasingly important in the world.
Sure.
You have unique issues here. And we need to study them, and hopefully we can bring some of our expertise. Personally, I've had some experience with consulting with the central bank here, with some specific banks. I won't tell you the name, but it was a prominent institution. And my job was to assess the credit risk evaluation tools that they were using. And we came up with some very surprising results, and it helped me in my own analysis of credit risk on an international level. And it's that kind of experience that you can't get when you only teach in your local environment.
Absolutely. Professor Altman, NYU is the worldwide reference in the preparation of training programs for global executives in business area. Please comment the customization of the FGV corporate programs in these international partnerships.
Well, I think we need to work together on this. It's not clear exactly what form it will take because it's a new venture.
Sure.
My guess is that we have certain comparative advantages, but not in all areas. And the first level of interaction probably will be to exploit that comparative advantage. For example, in the area of finance, in the area of business analytics. One of the new trends in education, we feel, is this area of business analytics. What does that mean? Because it's a general name that could be meaning many things. And I think basically it means analyzing large databases for decision-making purposes.
Sure.
We call it big data.
Sure.
And we just started a new program called MS in Business Analytics. This is the second year. And we've had an overwhelming response. Well, perhaps that could be the same experience for Brazilian students to be exposed to that idea and to learn from our relatively small but growing experience in that area. And I hope that we can contribute that. It's not my specialty, but I'm told how exciting and successful it's been. Another area is the area of risk management. And we think we have some unique advantages there in the area of credit risk, market risk, sustainability risk, reputation risk, bringing it all together into a integrated program which exists now, but I don't think it exists very much in emerging market countries like Brazil. So that could be an example of our efforts to work together in the future. And some of my faculty would be very excited to participate in that kind of program.
Yeah, likewise, it would be a great pleasure. Professor Altman, what is your vision of executive education contributing to sustainable business growth?
Well, that is a great question. The whole question of sustainability is a part of a growing interest that we call ESG, environment, social, governance. And part of that, environment and social, certainly is sustainability. In other words, what can a company do besides try to make profits for their shareholders that contribute to the sustainability of the environment and sustainability of the people who are not necessarily working for the company. And more we're finding investment institutions trying to find companies that do this more effectively than others. Not only to do good for mankind, but to make profits for the investors. My own son, for example, is an MBA graduate, 41 years old. He said to me recently, I want to stop what I'm doing and get involved in sustainability and environment, social issues, but from an investment standpoint. How can we find companies and what are the basics for these companies to succeed? Once you have investor money interested in finding these companies, I think you can motivate companies to do better jobs in this area because they will be more attractive to investors.
Sure, sure.
So it's a circular process. Personally, it's not my specialty, but I do know that there are mutual funds now, that there are family offices that say, I want to allocate 20%, 30% of my funds to companies that contribute to sustainability. And for me, that's an indication of its acceptability and its potential.
As I was talking to you before, I just come from a meeting and we were discussing exactly this topic. So
Yeah,
it's
and the company that was sponsoring the meeting probably realizes it's good for business also.
Sure.
Not only good for the community.
Yeah. You know that São Paulo is living in a very chaotic situation because of water. Our water reserves.
I heard that, yes.
Yeah. So today this is a high topic that we are talking here, both water and also the energy that we need to save, because most of our energy is also hydroelectric, so depends very much on water. So it's a problem that is on a very high side of everyone's here in Brazil.
Yeah, well, the issue for a country like Brazil, when you have these issues of water and energy and the like, is that at the same time you're trying to grow the economy to increase the productivity and the level of prosperity of the people. The problem is you only have limited resources to do everything.
Sure.
And so the trade-off between doing good for the economy and doing good for the people is always a difficult decision, and one that politicians have sometimes a tough time making the right decision.
Sure.
Not only here, but that's true anywhere in the world. Yeah. And you can see, even in countries like China, the trade-off between growth for the economy and the environment.
Sure.
And it's something that is, I'm glad I'm not a politician, to be honest with you, because it's very difficult to have that right decision and trade-off.
Yeah. Professor Altman, what are the trends in corporate education in the coming years?
Well, one trend is to follow on this area of international MBA programs. And we have found that in the beginning, when we introduced this idea, was about 10 years ago, most of the students were financed by their companies. Today, companies are no longer financing as easily because of the expensive nature of these programs, but yet the demand for the programs is actually increasing.
Yes.
And the reason is that individuals are willing to make that investment to get that international experience by not only taking courses from 3 or 4 schools that are part of a consortium, but also to study 2 weeks in New York, 2 weeks in China, 2 weeks in France, 2 weeks in London, 2 weeks in Sao Paulo. So that is one of the trends of internationalization of business education, and that is with the student level. The executive level, we've always had companies telling us, we want to hire people not only for their technical skills in their first job, but their ability to survive in an international environment.
Sure.
And we cannot tell that unless they've had some demonstrated ability in the past, maybe through the Peace Corps or some sort of education abroad, or programs that they studied abroad for 6 months or 1 year, and they came back speaking the language and knowing the culture. And this was one of the foundation blocks for our exchange program, this international management program that I mentioned earlier with respect to this program that grew from 3 schools to over 60 schools. So that for me is my own personal experience in that area. I was lucky I was a junior professor who happened to spend a year in France. You know, we were eating good food, drinking good wine, but also we had the opportunity to start this exchange program. And now this has moved into executive education as well. And obviously this is important going forward, and we hope to help that with FGV. But FGV has also been interested in this for a long time, but now they're even more interested.
Yeah, we are looking forward to a strong cooperation with NYU and Stern Business School, and we have other trends and other subjects which we are looking for in terms of internationalization. We are working with different kind of companies, and they have some different kind of ideas, and we always try to match. But I think NYU and the Stern Business School could be a perfect match in terms of finance and these opportunities for studying abroad in Middle East and Far East as well.
Yeah, the diversity of our campuses. And I encourage you to have association with other schools as well that may have a comparative advantage, say in marketing or in energy or in hydroelectric power or whatever. But we are very pleased that to contribute. And we will also, as I said, our faculty will learn a lot about. I remember I gave a seminar in Brazil, and I asked the risk officers of 8 large Brazilian banks, and I asked them, in your credit models, how important are qualitative variables, and how important are quantitative variables? And these were the biggest banks in Brazil. And this was 15 years ago. And every one of them gave the same answer: 70% quantitative, 30% qualitative. And I was astonished to find that it was the same answer. And I said, there are only 2 reasons that it could be. One, that it's the right answer and somehow you've all come to the right conclusion. Or there's one little consultant whispering in the ear of the CEO of each of the banks, 70-30 is the right. And then I asked the question, are you sure? And so then it started a research with each of these banks as to really, was it 70-30? And it turned out it wasn't. They thought it was because that's what the theory said, but in actuality it was more like 50-50. And that was, for me, and I hope for them, a very interesting experience, learning from someone from outside of Brazil, but asking 8 risk officers who never talked to each other to talk to each other. It was a nice experience.
Yeah. Professor Altman, thank you very much for visiting us. It was a great pleasure to get to know you. We hope to have a long cooperation with NYU and to Stern Business School, and that we can develop many joint projects together.
It's my pleasure, really, and look forward to continued cooperation.
Ok. Finalizamos aí o nosso FGV Palestras com uma entrevista excelente aqui com o professor Altman, da New York University, Stern Business School, e é um grande prazer receber o professor aqui no nosso escritório do FGV Corporativo para discutir as oportunidades de customização e novos programas internacionais. Muito obrigado a todos.